A long time ago, people in the occult were saying all practices are valid and you must respect everyone else's magical practice, because your spiritual path is going to be different from everyone else's. And I would generally agree that some people are going to have a different spiritual path than you, and that's usually fine. However, Christianity is a very interesting problem because Christianity has a defined bad guy. It is very Zoroastrian in that regard. And as a Hermetic Christian ceremonial magician, I find the practice of demonolatry to basically be the inverted opposite of basically everything that I believe. So I want to talk about it. I am Dave the Amateur Magus. On this channel I talk all about the mechanics behind ceremonial magic, occultism, esotericism, and the mechanics behind everything you will find within a dusty old grimoire. If you enjoy what I do here and you want to support the channel, link in the description to the Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to videos early, Patreon exclusive content, and instructional it's in the form of the occultic manuals, which are either instructional or philosophical depending on the month. Hope to see you all there if you want to support me, and if you want my services, the link to that is also down below. Let's get into the video proper. So for those of you who don't know what demonolatry is, demonolatry begins with the understanding that demons are actually pagan gods that have been demonized by Christianity. Now, there are some instances where this is a factual statement. This is not even up for debate. We have the historical evidence, and we have the experience from practitioners to know that this is 100% true. However, it then, like every piece of wrong information, takes that claim and extends it to all demons. All demons are actually former pagan gods that we have just demonized over time. This claim is not true, and we also have historical evidence that it is not. The first issue of demonolatry is that it believes that all demons are pagan gods, and this is factually not true. Some demons are just demons. Now, they have evolved over time. That is 100% true. But the claim that all demons are actually formerly pagan gods who have been just demonized over time is just factually not true. That being said, I can't actually say that it is untrue every time. Now, for those of you who don't know, I finished the Melon, and during the final week, I did have an experience where the demon Astaroth showed up as the goddess Astarte. And the immediate next thing was the angel said, no, wrong form, go back to normal. And then they were very annoyed, but they did it, because the angel was right there. This is a weird thing that I've noticed, and this is a weird piece of confirmation that I was not expecting, because it is fairly accepted in the occult community at large, I guess, that the demon Astaroth and the goddess Astarte are actually two versions of the same spirit. The demon Astaroth is a demonized version, obviously, but Astarte is definitely somewhere connected to it. And so, this was not something I was expecting at all. In fact, this was very, very confusing, and I was very taken aback by this form. But this was first-hand experience, at least personal gnosis on my end, that yes, this is a connection that they have. However, in that same story, the angel was right there, and also bossed the demon around, or the goddess around, which is a lot more confusing. Now, in order to explain how the fuck this happens, because in most people's conception, gods are supposed to be below angels. That's just kind of a thing that we innately know. If we look at the PGM, the archangels, Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel, are all said to be servants of Helios. So why the fuck is an angel that I got from praying able to boss a goddess around? In order to understand this, we need to look at things from a little bit more of a zoomed out perspective, a less human perspective. We need to talk a little bit about the divine hierarchy. And the way that the divine hierarchy is set up is usually things that are closer to the divine source get to boss around the things that are below them. Now, usually there are some rules to this. For example, the Angel of Water yelling at fire elementals will probably work, but you'll get better results if you've got the Elemental Angel of Water bossing around the water elementals, and the Elemental Angels of Fire bossing around the fire elementals, just because they're more conducive to that kind of work. The thing about angels is that, at least the angels from the Abramelin, they come from across the abyss, and they come from, like, God himself. Or itself. God doesn't really have a gender when you get up that high. It's really confusing. But they come from the raw divine essence itself. And so, they are able to boss around, or assist you in bossing around, everything that is below them. Well, guess where pagan gods usually are? Very rarely will the pagan gods be above them. This is just a natural course of what pagan gods are. Pagan gods are not meant to emulate the divine source. They are not meant to emulate the highest point in the cosmic order. They are, or usually give the messages and enact the orders of that cosmic order. They are usually there to do things like make sure the weather works. Make sure the ground doesn't stop working just because they looked away for 2 seconds. They are keeping reality functional. And this is where we get into the interesting problem. The pagan gods have the unenviable job of basically being really big figureheads for keeping the nuts and bolts of the world working, for keeping the gears turning. This is why so many of the stories of Greek myths are like, oh yes, we need to get the sun to move. That's why Helios carries the sun with his chariot. And then the moon shows up afterwards. The moon and the sun being the archetypal examples of clocks, because that's genuinely the way we kept time for years. Most people don't look at an analog clock or a digital clock in the medieval era. They usually will check, oh, is the sun up? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's about noon. And they'll have an innate sense of time based on that. Now, the reason I'm talking about the pagan gods is because it comes back to the central thesis of demonolatry. And that is, demons are able to be worshipped as gods. This is basically the worship of demons as gods, and the ritual use of demons like they were gods. Now, usually this is considered an incredibly chthonic form of practice, and it is usually very destructive. The reason for this is because the angels usually like to have you deconstruct slowly. Demons like to have you deconstruct all at once. It's a lot more of a harsh process. It is just a matter of solve et coagula and just determining which way are we going to do it first. Are we going to dissolve ourselves and break ourselves down, or are we going to become the new person and break all of the things that don't need to be there down afterwards? The angels and usually the right-hand path processes usually like to break you down and then reconstruct you, and in my experience, left-hand path systems usually like to have you reconstruct and then break down the bits that are not needed. It's kind of like an additive process versus a subtractive process. The angels like to do things via subtraction, the demons like to do things via addition, which is usually fairly backwards for a lot of people. That being said, the biggest issue I have with demonolatry is actually the fact that with the assumption that all demons are pagan gods, this leads to an incredibly strange situation where your gods can be bound and forced to serve other people. Not encouraged, forced. A lot of demonolatry centers around the Ars Goetia and the various major archdemons of hell. And all of these archdemons, with the notable exception of Belphegor, are bound in the Abramelin. The Ars Goetia demons are bound in the Ars Goetia, obviously. The reason why this is weird is because people are worshipping them like there's gods, and they're doing it out of a manual on how to bind them and force them to do what you want them to do. Oh no. This is, in my personal opinion, the main issue with demonolatry, And the people who practice demonolatry can't seem to really wrap their head around it, so I'm going to lay it out from the opposite side. If you're getting the gods that you worship from a catalog that is specifically designed to instruct you on how to bind and chain up said gods, they're not gods. If you are getting your gods from a manual on how to forcibly command them into doing whatever you want, they are not gods. If you need to worship, or they need to threaten you with violence of any kind, or they need to be threatened with violence of any kind, they are not proper gods. This is the main issue with demonolatry, because for the most part you will find that they will have real experiences with these demons, and they will line up fairly well. The problem is that they're going to them as though they are gods. And then they will say things that I've seen, some crazy takes I've seen online are, oh, don't sit into a circle because that's mean, or that's offensive to them. I don't give a fuck what a demon says is offensive. Unless, I don't give a fuck what a demon says is offensive. You know what's really offensive, though? You know that these are, let's actually run with the line that they are all pagan gods. Why are you using the name that they have been enslaved under? Isn't that kind of insulting? That's kind of more insulting to them than it is to just say, ask them, because if you do believe that they are actually, pagan gods, you can evoke them and ask them what their original name was. You can ask them, hey, Astaroth, is it true that you were originally the goddess Astarte? And then you can go from there, and that's how you would actually build a relationship based on, them being gods, and not them being demons who you're calling up as the demon version, and you're giving kind of lip service. This is something that I've always really rubbed me the wrong way about what Poke Runyon does, which is kind of low-key the main proponent of the Baal is actually Baal Hadad, and Astaroth is actually Astarte from the Hermetic stuff, from the Hermetic side of the occult spaces. It's always rubbed me the wrong way that he worked with them as the Goetic instead of as the god that he believes and knows that they are, because he's done the research. This is where my entire criticism comes from. If you believe that you are working with a formerly pagan god who was venerated and worshipped, why the fuck are you using the name that they were using to enslave the god? And also, how is your god able to be enslaved in the first place? That's a whole red flag in and of itself. Shit, there's a manual of 72 fucking demons that you can just crack open, and depending on your authority and licenses, you can just boss them around. And obviously not all the demons are in there, right? We have Lucifer. Lucifer isn't in there. Beelzebub isn't in there. Satan proper, I guess, isn't in there either. But you know what book does have that? The fucking Abramelin. So you mean to tell me, and this is one of the funny things, because all you need to do is pray to the Most High for 6 months and do some funny words, and then an angel will show up instructing you on how to bind the most powerful demons in hell. If you have a manual for how to bind your gods, get new ones. That's all I have to say. I'm Dave the Amateur Magus. Hope everyone is having a good day. If you're not having a good day, hope your day gets better. Take it easy, take care, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.